This is part two of pine trees. If you didn't watch the first part, watch part one. You're going to take this bark. Now, if this was the springtime, you could do, literally take this bark down, and you're seeing strips of white bark inside. Now, you instantly peel that off. The way I do it like that, I just take the bark there, if it's like bark like this, and I just run my finger over like this. And you can see I'm getting these long spaghetti looking noodle things. And people cook them like spaghetti, but in reality, I don't like them like that. I really don't like it at all like that. Pine tree is one of those kind of things that's going to hold its resin very tightly. Even after boiling, you get a little bit of resin out of it. It's still going to hold on to that stuff. But what you can do from here is you can chew on that and eat it. And the more you eat of this, the less drying of the mouth it's going to do. Most people, the first time they eat it, they're going to run and try to drink a gallon of water to get that resin out. The more you eat it, the less it bothers you. It's extremely good. It has a chemical in it that's an antifungal. I can't pronounce it. It starts with an R. It's resveratrol or something like that. But you can dry this up, literally, and you're going to make cheese out of it. You can make bread out of it or whatever. But I went ahead and dried some. And you can see I just chopped it up and made a nice little powder out of it. That's very woody. People are going to not like it. It's going to taste like sawdust to you. But this is the kind of thing you don't eat plain. You mix with sweet berries, persimmons, whatever. Like I was doing the acorn. You don't try to eat this like a main meal like you would see in other videos and stuff that people are doing. If this was the springtime, I got a ladybug there, and you peeled all the way down the tree on one side, on the sunny side, which would be the south, and you peeled down like that on a huge tree, just on one side, what will happen is the sap will run all the way down. And you can collect that sap, and every 5 to 8 days you come back and you scrape it again. The reason being is because it will try to heal itself, and that stuff starts to dry, it won't run anymore. This doesn't hurt the tree. Everybody thinks it does, but it doesn't hurt the tree. So you would come back and re-scrape it 5, 8 days later. It'll refresh this wood. This wood actually starts to send out more sap. If you don't do that, it'll just harden up, which you can just peel off and use for fire tinder. It's really good for doing a million different things, a waterproofing, a glue, you name it. But you can take the sap there and make a tea out of it and throat. It helps your throat when you have a sore throat. Otherwise, in the springtime, if you were to peel all of this off, what you end up with is a nice, sappy, watery sap. And it's not as sticky as you think it's going to be. It's actually pretty sweet. And you just go up there and lick it like a popsicle. I just did that, and that was actually pretty good. And it's way past due. So, just on this alone, shows you how much you can get off of pine trees. Got pine needle tea, I had terminal buds. I could have had some pine nuts. I could show you how to cook the pine cone. There's a lot of different other things I'm going to show you, but I'm going to have to do a spring video on pines to show you how to get pollen flower. You can use baby cones, you can all the new growths and stuff like that. But right here, on this pine tree, if you take this off, this doesn't have a lot of sap. This has very little sap. And when you take this off and you dry this in the sun, here I made a fishing lure, a popping fishing lure. There's hardly no sap whatsoever. It's like balsa wood. You can carve this stuff so easily. This is only on the long leaf pine. And so you could do a lot of things with that, but extremely light wood. And if you're a very good firebow drill person, you could literally start a fire using this wood right here. I forgot to mention something about the needles. When you're gathering pine trees, and you're in a suburb area or whatever, and you don't know if there's toxics or sprays or whatever, a good thing to do is look at the needles. And what will happen is on the needles you'll see these yellow spots and goldish brown color spots, look like rust color. And when you start to see a lot of that on the needles, that's telling you it's pollution right there. So you need to avoid that pine tree and just go find some other pine tree. You can look on the rest of the pine trees and see if there's the new growth that won't be as polluted, but that tree is absorbing extremely amounts of toxins in the air, and so that's a good sign when you're in the city or whatever, and you look at your pine tree that's right by your house, and it's got a lot of that on it. You're breathing pollution in every day. Okay, I don't know if you can see this well, but you can notice that the pine needles have kind of lost their color. They're more like a dingy green color, and that lets you know that this tea is pretty much ready to go. All that vitamin C is in here. It's still warm. I didn't let it boil, and this is going to make some good tea. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, the tea doesn't really have a lot of color. It's a slight green, but I'm going to tell you something. You put this in your mouth, and you're automatically going to think you just squeezed grapefruit juice down into there and warmed it up. It's very delicious. The aroma is so strong in the house of the pine. I mean, it's got that good cleaning scent. So that's another thing. If you got some stinky fish in your house or whatever, boil some pine needles on the tree. Get rid of all those bad odors in the house. That's another good thing to do. Talking about deodorizing, and when I was hunting a lot, I would take a bag of fresh needles and I would put my hunting clothes in that bag, and I'd always keep it in there. And that way, when I went hunting, my clothes were scented with pine smell, so it covered any bad odors that I might have had. You could take the pine needles and actually put it in a bag and close it up and tie it off so it doesn't go all over the washing machine. But you could actually throw a humongous little bag of pine needles, and that would actually scent your clothes, and it's actually a disinfectant. You think of pine sol, that's really just the oil that is risen from the pine needle tea, and it's skimmed off or it's distilled. A lot of people would distill the sap to get turpentine, and so and then what is left over from the distilling is rosin, and rosin we use for coating strings on violins and for baseball bags or whatever. There's many uses. Pine tar is when they take chunks of pine root, like fat lighter, from a tree, which is a good fire starter. I mean, it's solid heartwood, and you just barely light that, and it goes for a long time. And like dipping in kerosene almost. But they would take that and they would charcoal it in a big tank, and they would collect the pine tar, and that's actually a waterproofing varnish. That's You could buy that on the store, just regular pine tar, and that's pretty much what they did. And the leftover was actual charcoal. Anybody that's grown in the South, their grandparents probably might have worked in a pine forest if you worked in South Georgia and Florida and stuff like that. My parents sure did. We grew up in the Okefenokee Swamp, and that's what a lot of our family did. Okay, when I was up in Massachusetts, I was in a pine forest in the woods, and I made a teepee frame of just down trees and that were pine trees, and I just kept stacking around those trees until it was like this much space in between each tree, and I had a big strong frame that I tied with vines. And then what I did in between the trees, I stuffed pine needles just straight up the tree, just like that, and that actually kept water running off in a major downpour. It didn't even get wet inside. And you just go inside and you put a knee high layer of pine straw, and I had a nice comfortable bed that was totally waterproof. Didn't take that long to make that shelter. You could actually make a debris hut with just piles and piles of pine needles and just crawl inside of it if you're really in a hurry.
But you can make a nice shelter out of that. I used the logs in between trees. I crisscrossed them like that in between two trees. I made windbreaks that kept me a little bit warmer in the wintertime. But you could basically make this big teepee, fill it entirely with pine straw if you want it to, and just crawl in a hole. And you're totally snug as a rug, just like a squirrel nest or something. And it's extremely warm. You don't want to light a fire near it. I mean, it's a torch. So this is the type of shelter that you would um, rely only on the actual pine needles to keep you warm, and it will keep you warm in extreme cold weather. I've done it plenty of times. Okay, when I was talking about washing your clothes with pine needles, I meant put it in like a pillowcase bag. I'm not a plastic bag. You want that stuff to leach through the pine stuff. But anyways, I dried that pine bark. I literally chopped this with a knife. You could grind it with a rock or whatever, and it's very consistency of flour. You could actually sift this and actually get the little particles, but there's no need to because we're just going to make tea out of this. I got some water, and we're going to boil this up, and we're going to make some very high antioxidant tea right here. This is some extremely good stuff for you for healthy. If you had some sap in there, you got cold treating stuff that they've been using for hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay, I just finished the tea. It's getting a reddish color, and the pine bark is reconstituted. It's very soft. You can chew it again. Uh, okay, this is the color of the bark tea, and this is extremely healthy for you. I already explained why, but it's really good for a cold or something like that. And you can almost just feel the sap being coated on your throat, especially if you had a cold or something. Now here's all the stuff all powdered out. That actually turns out to be a lot of food value right there. And this is the point where it's a little bit more accessible. This is why I don't like the noodles, because you got to chill the noodles. This is already broke up and it's ready to go. You mix some fruit with that. You're not going to notice it that much. You're going to feel a little drying of the throat, but there you go. We got a lot of vitamins and carbohydrates and stuff like that. Okay, this is the pine tea. Again, it's cold. If I had put sugar or some kind of sugar source in here, this would have been a really cold, good drink to have like in the morning with your breakfast. Extremely good, but they'll take spruce needles, and you could do this with pretty much any of the pine family. Boil it down, big shoots of all the top shoots, and this big bucket of it, and they keep boiling that down, and then they would add sugar and molasses to it, and they would get this stuff like a syrup out of it. Or you could get what they did with spruce beer. Just add a little bit of fermentation, a little bit of alcohol, and then you can bottle it. And you had any kind of pine, spruce, hemlock, whatever beer, like you would have like a root beer or a birch beer or something like that. But the syrup, if you never had syrup made like that, yes, you're getting a lot of sugar, but you're getting a Christmas smelling. It'd be like Christmas tree in your house, and you'd have a nice, wonderful syrup. Um, okay. Certain pine family trees like spruce are definitely going to have good strong roots that you can use for tying baskets. They did it with birch canoes and stuff like that. And if you can find a good source, you can literally make roots into rope. And sometimes those roots, the tender parts of it, you can just pop it in your mouth and eat it. It's actually pretty good. I'll see if I can go find some roots too. I will get some pine cones and show you different stuff. See if I can find some pine seeds here, since and how you can cook the inner core of a pine cone. If I can actually find a good source of it. But other than that, I'm going to try to get a video on saps, and then and what you can do with the sap, and or I should say the resin, and then I'll have to make another video in the springtime after that. So look forward to that.